The lawyer's pen scratched across the final page of the deed, and Adrian Norcross felt his pulse quicken as he realized there was no turning back from the decision that would change everything about his life. He had spent the last of his military severance pay on this remote farmstead in the borderlands, a place so far from civilization that the land agent had actually tried to talk him out of the purchase. But Adrian needed distance from the war, from the screams that still woke him in the night, from the eyes of people who expected him to be the hero he had never felt like. The property sat 3 days' ride from the nearest town, nestled in a valley where the forests grew thick and the mountains rose like ancient guardians against the northern sky. According to the documents, the previous owner had died without heirs, and the land had sat vacant for nearly 2 years. The price had been almost suspiciously low, but Adrian had learned not to question good fortune when it came his way. He arrived on a gray morning in early autumn, his horse tired and his supplies weighing heavily in the saddlebags. The farmhouse came into view as he crested the final hill, a sturdy stone structure with a thatched roof that looked surprisingly well maintained for an abandoned property. The barn stood nearby, its doors closed, and fields stretched out in neat rows that had clearly been tended within the season. Adrian dismounted slowly, his hand instinctively moving to the sword at his hip before he forced himself to relax. The war was over. He was done fighting. That was the whole point of coming here. He was halfway to the front door when it opened. 3 figures emerged into the daylight, and Adrian's breath caught in his throat. They were orcs, all female, all watching him with expressions that ranged from curiosity to something he could not quite name. The tallest stood in the center, her green skin marked with darker patterns along her arms and neck, her black hair braided intricately down her back. She wore a simple brown dress that did nothing to hide her muscular frame, and her amber eyes fixed on him with an intensity that made him feel suddenly exposed. To her left stood another orc woman, slightly shorter but broader in the shoulders, with her dark green hair cut short and practical. She wore trousers and a work shirt, and her hands were stained with what looked like garden soil. Her tusks were more prominent than her companions, and she crossed her arms as she studied him. The third was younger, perhaps barely into adulthood, with lighter green skin and an almost delicate build compared to her sisters. She wore a blue dress and held what appeared to be a book against her chest, her pointed ears twitching slightly as she met his gaze. The silence stretched between them for a long moment before the tallest one spoke. "You must be the human who bought our farm," she said, her voice deep and resonant. Adrian's mind raced. "Your farm. The deed says this property was abandoned. The previous owner died without heirs." "Our father died," the tallest orc said, stepping forward. Her sisters moved with her, flanking her on either side. "But we are his heirs. We have lived here, worked this land, maintained everything. The human authorities simply did not recognize our claim because we are orcs." His hand had moved back toward his sword without conscious thought, and he saw all 3 of them notice the gesture. The middle sister's eyes narrowed, but the tallest one simply raised her hand in a calming motion. "We are not here to fight you," she said. "My name is Kendra. These are my sisters, Mora and Lysa." She gestured to the muscular one and the younger one in turn. "We have a proposition for you." Adrian forced himself to breathe, to think past the ingrained reactions the army had drilled into him. Orcs were the enemy. Orcs were monsters. Orcs killed without mercy and took what they wanted. But these 3 stood calmly on the porch of what was now legally his farmhouse, and none of them had drawn a weapon or made a threatening move. "What kind of proposition?" he asked carefully. Kendra's lips curved into something that was not quite a smile. "This farm requires constant work. The fields need tending, The animals need care. The buildings need maintenance. Our father managed it alone for years, but since his death, the three of us have struggled to keep everything going while also hiding from human patrols. You now own the land, but you know nothing about farming, do you? Adrian felt heat rise to his face. I can learn. Perhaps, Kendra said. But winter comes early in these mountains, and learning through failure will leave you starving before spring. We propose a partnership. You allow us to stay, to continue working the farm as we have been. In exchange, we teach you everything you need to know, and we all share in the harvest. That is not much of a partnership, Adrian said. I would be giving you room and board on my own property. Mora, the muscular sister, snorted. Your property that we have been maintaining, the roof you see above you. I rethatched it this summer, the garden that will feed you through winter. I planted and tended it. The chickens in that coop. Lisa nurses them when they fall ill. You bought land that would be worthless without our work. Mora, Kendra said softly, a note of warning in her voice. Her sister fell silent, though her expression remained defiant. Lisa, the youngest, spoke for the first time, her voice quieter than her sister's but no less steady. We have nowhere else to go. Orc clans do not accept half-breeds, and humans kill us on sight in most places. Our father gave us sanctuary here, and we have made it our home. We are asking you to let us stay in the only place we have ever belonged. Adrian looked at the three of them, at the desperate hope carefully hidden behind Kendra's calm expression, at Mora's defensive posture, at Lisa's trembling hands clutching her book. He thought about the farmhouse that should have been falling apart but clearly was not, about the neat rows of the garden visible around the side of the building, about the fact that he truly knew nothing about farming and had only vague plans to figure it out as he went. He thought about the war, about the orc warriors he had faced in battle, about the propaganda that painted them all as mindless savages. These three did not match anything he had been told to expect. You said you had a proposition, Adrian said slowly. That sounded like you were asking for charity. Kendra's expression hardened slightly. What would make it a fair trade in your eyes, human? My name is Adrian, he said, and I am not sure yet, but I did not come all this way to turn around and leave. Let me see what you have been doing with the place. Show me the farm, the fields, everything. Then we can talk about terms. The three sisters exchanged glances, some silent communication passing between them. Finally, Kendra nodded. Very well. Mora, show him the livestock and the barn. Lisa, take him through the house and explain the supplies. I will walk the fields with him afterward. Adrian Norcross, welcome to your farm. The way she said it, with just a hint of irony in her voice, made it clear she still considered this her home regardless of what the deed said. Adrian found himself oddly unbothered by that. He unsaddled his horse and followed Mora toward the barn, very aware that his life had just become far more complicated than he had planned. The barn was immaculate. Mora showed him 6 dairy cows, a bull, 24 chickens, 3 pigs, and a pair of goats, all healthy and well cared for. She explained the feeding schedules, the milking routine, the signs of illness to watch for in each type of animal. She spoke with the casual expertise of someone who had spent years doing this work, and Adrian found himself paying close attention despite his initial wariness. You really know what you are doing, he said, as she demonstrated the proper way to check a cow's hooves for stones. Mora glanced at him, her expression skeptical. Did you expect orcs to be stupid? No, Adrian said honestly. I just have never seen orcs doing farm work before. In the war, we only encountered warriors. In the war, humans only sent warriors to kill us, Mora replied flatly. Of course that is all you saw. Most orcs are farmers, herders, craftspeople. We are not all battle-mad berserkers, no matter what your generals told you. Adrian absorbed that, fitting it into his understanding of the world and finding that understanding suddenly inadequate. What happened to your father? Mora's hand stilled on the cow's hoof. He fell from the barn roof while making repairs, broke his neck. It was quick, at least. Lysa found him. I am sorry, Adrian said, and meant it. She looked at him sharply, as if searching for mockery, then nodded once. He was a good man. Human, but good. He found each of us at different times, took us in when no one else would. Kendra was first. She was just a child, barely 6 years old, wandering alone after her clan was destroyed by human soldiers. He raised her as his daughter. Then Mora, me, a few years later. I was being hunted for stealing food, and Lysa came last, about 8 years ago. She was 12, abandoned by her orc mother for being too small and weak. You are not actually sisters, then, Adrian said. Mora's eyes flashed. We are sisters in every way that matters. Blood means nothing compared to the bonds we have forged here. She finished with the cow and straightened, wiping her hands on her trousers. Come, Lysa will be waiting to show you the house. Lysa proved to be meticulous in her explanations, walking Adrian through the pantry stocked with preserved vegetables, the root cellar full of potatoes and carrots, the smokehouse with hanging strips of meat, the shelves lined with jars of jam and pickled goods. She showed him the bedrooms upstairs, 3 of them clearly occupied by the sisters and one that had belonged to their father, now dusty and unused. We can prepare this room for you, Lysa said softly, if you decide to let us stay. Where would you go if I said no? Adrian asked. She met his eyes, and he saw fear there despite her calm demeanor. Into the forest, I suppose. Try to survive the winter. Hope that we can make it to spring and find somewhere else before humans or hostile orc clans find us. You would not survive, Adrian said. It was not a question. Probably not, Lysa agreed. Mora might. She is strong and an excellent hunter, but Kendra and I would likely die before the first snow melted. Her honesty struck him harder than any plea would have. She was not begging, not manipulating, simply stating facts and trusting him to make his own decision. I have not decided yet, Adrian said, but I am listening. Lysa smiled, a small expression that made her look even younger. That is more than most humans would do. Come, Kendra will be waiting by the fields. Kendra stood at the edge of the largest field, her arms crossed, her gaze distant as she looked out over the rows of harvested grain. The autumn sun was beginning to dip toward the horizon, painting everything in shades of gold and amber. We had a good harvest this year, she said as Adrian approached. Enough to feed 4 people through winter with some to spare for selling in spring. The wheat is already stored in the granary. The vegetable garden still has some late crops coming in. We have been working this land for years, Adrian. We know every corner of it, every quirk of the soil, every place where the frost comes early or the drainage is poor. Why are you telling me this? Adrian asked. She turned to face him, and in the fading light, her amber eyes seemed to glow. Because I want you to understand what you bought. This is not just land. It is a living, breathing thing that requires constant attention and care. It is a responsibility, not just an asset. Our father understood that. I need to know if you do as well. Adrian thought about his reasons for coming here, about the need to escape, to find peace, to build something instead of destroying. I am trying to understand, he said quietly. I spent 5 years learning how to kill. I want to learn how to do something else. Kendra studied him for a long moment. Mora says you are a veteran. What did you do in the war? Infantry. Then cavalry. I was good at it, which is why they kept promoting me. By the end, I was leading raids into orc territory. He met her gaze steadily. I killed a lot of your people. And now you want to make peace with that by farming. There was no accusation in her voice, only curiosity. "I want to make peace with myself by doing something that matters," Adrian said. "Something that creates instead of destroys. I do not know if that is possible, but I have to try." Kendra nodded slowly. "Our father used to say that the best way to heal a wounded soul was to sink your hands into the earth and grow something. He was running from his own demons when he came here. The farm saved him in a way. Perhaps it can save you too." "What are your terms?" Adrian asked. "You said you had a proposition." "You let us stay," Kendra said. "We continue to work the farm alongside you. We teach you everything we know. In exchange, we share the food, the shelter, and whatever profits come from selling surplus. We are partners, not servants or laborers." "What happens when I learn enough that I do not need you anymore?" Kendra's expression tightened. "Then I suppose we will find out what kind of man you really are." Adrian considered this. It was risky, sharing his home with 3 orc women he had just met. If anyone from town found out, there could be consequences. But the alternative was sending them away to almost certain death, and he found he could not quite bring himself to do that. "There is one more thing," he said. "If we do this, if we become partners, then you need to tell me the truth about something." "What did you mean earlier when you said I belong to you?" Kendra's cheeks darkened to a deeper shade of green, and for the first time, she looked uncomfortable. That was Mora's idea of a joke. She has a poor sense of humor sometimes. When we saw the property transfer notice, we knew someone would come eventually to claim the farm. We decided that whoever it was, we would do whatever necessary to convince them to let us stay. Mora suggested that we should simply claim ownership of you the same way you now claimed ownership of the land. She thought it would be funny to turn the situation on its head. "I see," Adrian said, though he was not entirely sure he believed her explanation. There had been something in the way Kendra had looked at him when she said it, something that suggested layers he did not yet understand. "So," Kendra asked, "do we have an agreement?" Adrian extended his hand. "Partners. Equal shares in the work and the rewards. You teach me farming and we figure out the rest as we go." Kendra stared at his offered hand for a moment, then clasped it firmly. Her palm was calloused and warm, her grip strong. "Partners," she agreed. As they shook, Adrian felt the weight of the decision settle over him. He had come here seeking solitude and peace, and instead he had found himself bound to 3 orc women and a farm he barely knew how to run. It was not what he had planned, but then again, very little in his life had gone according to plan. "Come," Kendra said, releasing his hand. "It is nearly dark, and Lysa will have dinner ready. Tomorrow, your real education begins." That night, Adrian lay in his father's old bed, staring at the ceiling and listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the house settling around him. He could hear muffled voices from down the hall, the 3 sisters talking quietly in their rooms. He wondered what they were saying about him, whether they trusted him, whether they regretted showing themselves instead of hiding. He thought about the war, about the orc warriors he had fought. They had been fierce and terrifying, fighting with a savagery that had haunted his nightmares. But Kendra, Mora, and Lysa bore no resemblance to those warriors. They were farmers, caretakers, survivors trying to make a life in a world that wanted them dead or gone. Adrian had killed their people. Now he was going to live with them, work beside them, share meals and shelter and the daily rhythms of farm life. The irony was not lost on him. Sleep came slowly, and when it finally did, his dreams were gentler than they had been in months. The next morning, Mora woke him before dawn by pounding on his door and shouting that the cows would not milk themselves. Adrian stumbled downstairs to find all 3 sisters already dressed and moving with purposeful efficiency. Lysa handed him a bowl of porridge and a cup of milk still warm from the cow, while Kendra outlined the day's tasks. "Mora will teach you how to milk the cows and care for the livestock," she said. "Lisa will show you the kitchen garden and what still needs harvesting before the frost. I will work on repairing the fence in the north pasture. Tonight, we will review what you learned and plan for tomorrow." "You have this very organized," Adrian said around a mouthful of porridge. "We have been running this farm ourselves for 2 years," Kendra replied. "Organization is the only way to survive." The days fell into a pattern. Adrian learned to milk cows, his fingers clumsy at first but gradually gaining the rhythm. He learned to scatter grain for the chickens, to check the pigs for parasites, to identify which plants in the garden were weeds and which were valuable herbs. He learned the smell of good soil versus bad, the feel of grain ready for harvest, the sound a cow made when she was content versus distressed. His body, hardened by years of military training, adapted quickly to the physical labor. But the knowledge, the 1,000 small details that meant the difference between success and failure on a farm, came slowly. He made mistakes. He forgot to latch the chicken coop one night, and Mora spent an hour the next morning tracking down escaped birds. He watered the garden wrong and nearly drowned a bed of herbs Lisa had been carefully cultivating. He tried to fix a loose board on the barn, and instead made the problem worse. Through it all, the 3 sisters showed remarkable patience. Mora would grumble and complain, but she always took the time to show him the right way to do things. Lisa would quietly correct his errors and explain the reasoning behind each task. And Kendra would review his progress each evening, her praise measured but genuine when he did well, her criticism constructive when he failed. 3 weeks into this new life, Adrian sat at the dinner table and realized he had not thought about the war all day. The constant mental loop of battles and death that had plagued him since his discharge had quieted, replaced by concerns about whether the pigs had enough feed and when the first frost might arrive. "You are smiling," Lisa observed from across the table. Adrian touched his face, surprised to find it was true. "I suppose I am. I was just thinking that I feel better than I have in a long time." Kendra, serving a stew thick with vegetables and rabbit meat, paused to look at him. "The farm has that effect. It demands so much of your attention that there is little room left for dwelling on the past." "Is that what happened with your father?" Adrian asked. The 3 sisters exchanged glances, and Adrian wondered if he had overstepped, but Kendra nodded slowly as she sat down. "He came from a town 3 days south of here," she said. "He was a soldier once, like you. He fought in the border wars before you were born. When he came back, he could not adjust to normal life. He bought this land and disappeared into it. He used to say the farm saved his life by giving him something to care about besides his own pain. And then he found me," Kendra continued, her voice soft. "I think I saved him too in a different way, gave him a purpose beyond just surviving. After that, he seemed to seek out orcs who needed help. He brought each of us home, gave us safety and a family." "He sounds like he was a good man," Adrian said. "He was," Mora said firmly. "Better than any human or orc we have encountered since." "You have not encountered many good humans then," Adrian said. "No," Lisa said simply. "Most want to kill us or drive us away. You are the first who has chosen differently." The weight of that statement settled over the table. Adrian looked at each of them in turn, seeing the wariness that still lingered beneath their acceptance of him, the fear that he might change his mind and turn them out, the hope that maybe, just maybe, this arrangement could become something stable and lasting. "I am not going to ask you to leave," he said quietly. "I know I have only been here a short time, but this already feels more like a home than anywhere I have been since I was a child. You 3 have made that possible. I am not going to destroy it." Kendra's eyes glistened slightly, though she blinked it away quickly. "Thank you, Adrian." They finished dinner in comfortable silence, and afterward, as Adrian helped Lisa wash the dishes, he felt a sense of belonging that had been absent from his life for longer than he cared to admit. The first frost came in mid-October, coating the fields in a delicate layer of white that melted as soon as the sun rose. Maura declared it was time to bring the animals into the barn for the season and to make sure all the winter preparations were complete. They spent a week moving hay into storage, checking the barn for drafts, and ensuring the animals had adequate shelter. Adrian found himself working most closely with Kendra during this time, as she directed the overall effort while Maura and Lisa handled specific tasks. He noticed things about her he had not before. The way she sang softly to herself when she thought no one was listening, the careful gentleness with which she treated the animals despite her strength, the way her face relaxed into something almost peaceful when she stood in the fields at sunset. One evening, they were securing the last of the grain in the granary when a storm rolled in suddenly, the rain coming down in sheets before they could make it back to the house. They took shelter in the granary, sitting on sacks of wheat and listening to the rain hammer against the roof. "This reminds me of something," Kendra said, her voice barely audible over the storm. "What?" Adrian asked. "When I first came here, I was terrified of storms. The night my clan was destroyed, it was raining just like this. I could not hear the soldiers coming over the sound of the rain. When your father found me, I was hiding in a hollow tree, shaking so hard I could barely breathe. Every storm for years after that sent me into a panic." "What changed?" Adrian asked gently. "Your father, our father, sat with me through every storm. He would tell me stories, or we would play games, or he would just hold my hand until it passed. Eventually, I learned that not every storm brought death. Some just brought rain." She looked at him, rain dripping from her hair. "You have been kind to us, Adrian." "Kinder than we had any right to expect." "Why?" Adrian considered the question carefully. "I spent 5 years of my life taking things away from people. Homes, safety, lives. I am tired of destroying. When I saw the 3 of you on that porch, I had a choice. I could take away the home you had built here, or I could try to build something together. The second option seemed like the better path." "Even though we are orcs?" Kendra asked. "Even though you are orcs," Adrian confirmed. "The war taught me that orcs could be warriors. You 3 are teaching me that they can be so much more." Kendra reached out slowly, giving him time to pull away, and rested her hand on his arm. "Thank you," she said, "for seeing us as people instead of monsters." Her touch sent an unexpected warmth through him, and Adrian realized with some surprise that he had come to care for these 3 women, for their well-being and happiness. It was not what he had expected when he bought this farm, but it felt right in a way he could not quite articulate. The storm passed eventually, and they ran through the mud back to the house, laughing like children as the rain soaked them through. Maura met them at the door with towels and complaints about them tracking mud everywhere, but there was affection beneath her grumbling. That night, as Adrian lay in bed, he thought about Kendra's hand on his arm, about the trust implicit in that small gesture. He thought about how the 3 sisters had become less like strange housemates and more like family. He thought about how this farm, this place he had bought on a whim, had somehow become exactly what he needed. Sleep came easily, and for once, his dreams were of fields and harvests, not battles and blood. November brought colder weather and the first real snowfall. The world transformed into a landscape of white and gray, beautiful and harsh. They settled into winter routines, tending the animals in the barn, maintaining the fires, working on indoor projects like mending tools and making repairs to equipment. Adrian spent more time with each of the sisters individually, learning their quirks and personalities. Mora taught him to carve wood, her strong hands guiding his as they made new handles for tools and small decorative pieces. She was gruff and direct, but her rare smiles were genuine, and she had a dry sense of humor that caught him off guard. Lysa shared her books with him, and they spent evenings reading by the fire while the wind howled outside. She was the most educated of the three, having learned to read from their father, and she had a curiosity about the world that extended far beyond the farm. They talked about history, about the war from both perspectives, about the possibility of a future where orcs and humans might live in peace. And Kendra was everywhere. She managed the household with quiet efficiency, always aware of what needed doing and who was best suited to do it. But Adrian also saw her moments of vulnerability. The way she sometimes stood at the window staring at nothing, lost in memories he could only guess at. The care she took with small things like arranging flowers in a vase or making sure everyone's favorite foods appeared at dinner. He was falling for her. The realization came gradually, not in a single moment but in 1,000 small ones. The way his heart lifted when she smiled at him, the way he found excuses to work near her, the way her opinion mattered more than anyone else's. The way he caught himself watching her when he should have been focused on other things. It was complicated and probably foolish. She was an orc, and he was human. The world outside this farm would never accept such a relationship. But here, in this small pocket of existence they had carved out together, it felt possible. The question was whether she felt anything similar, or if he was simply a useful partner in maintaining the farm she considered home. December came with deep snow and bitter cold. They were confined mostly to the house and barn, venturing out only when necessary. The close quarters made privacy nearly impossible, but it also fostered a deeper intimacy. They learned each other's habits, accommodated each other's needs, became a cohesive unit rather than four separate individuals. One evening, with a blizzard raging outside, they gathered around the fireplace after dinner. Mora was carving, Lysa was reading, and Kendra was mending clothes. Adrian sat sharpening tools, but his attention kept drifting to Kendra. "You are staring," Mora said without looking up from her carving. Adrian felt his face heat. "I was just thinking." "About what?" Lysa asked, glancing up from her book with a knowing smile. "About how different my life is now compared to a few months ago," Adrian said, which was true if incomplete. "Better or worse?" Kendra asked, her eyes still on her mending. "Better," Adrian said firmly. "Much better." Kendra looked up then, meeting his gaze, and something passed between them. A recognition, perhaps, or an acknowledgement of feelings neither was quite ready to name. Mora set down her carving with more force than necessary. "Are you two going to keep dancing around this, or are you going to actually talk about it, Mora?" Kendra said, a warning in her voice. "No," Mora said, standing up. "We all see it. You look at each other like lovesick fools. He finds excuses to be near you. You light up whenever he enters a room. It is obvious and painful to watch." "Mora is not known for her subtlety," Lysa said apologetically. "But she is not wrong." Adrian looked at Kendra, who had set aside her mending and was staring at her hands. "Is it that obvious?" he asked. "Apparently," Kendra said softly. "Then maybe we should talk about it," Adrian said, his heart hammering. Mora grabbed Lysa's arm. "We will give you privacy." "Come on, little sister." Lysa went willingly, shooting Kendra an encouraging look as they headed upstairs. The door to their room closed with a definitive click, leaving Adrian and Kendra alone. The fire crackled in the silence. Outside, the wind howled. Inside, two people struggled to find the right words. "I did not expect this," Kendra said finally. When I saw you arrive that first day, I thought you would be just another human who wanted us gone. I never imagined that I would come to care for you." "I did not expect it either," Adrian admitted. "But I do care for you, Kendra, more than I probably should, given how complicated it makes everything." She looked up, her amber eyes reflecting the firelight. "It is complicated. You are human. I am orc. If anyone found out about us, it could be dangerous for both of us, but especially for you. Humans who consort with orcs are often treated as traitors." "I know," Adrian said, "but I have spent the last few months learning that everything I was taught about orcs was wrong. You are not monsters. You are not savages. You are people with the same capacity for love and kindness and hope as anyone. And you, specifically, are the most remarkable person I have ever met." Kendra stood, crossing to where he sat. She knelt in front of him, her hands resting on his knees. "I am afraid," she said quietly. "I am afraid of wanting something I cannot have. I am afraid of what it means to love a human after everything humans have done to my people, to me. I am afraid that this will end badly for both of us." Adrian covered her hands with his. "I am afraid too. But I would rather be afraid with you than safe alone." She laughed, a soft sound that was half sob. "That might be the most foolish thing you have ever said." "Probably," Adrian agreed, "but I mean it." Kendra leaned forward, resting her forehead against his. They stayed like that for a long moment, breathing together, neither quite willing to take the final step. Finally, Adrian pulled back just enough to meet her eyes. "May I kiss you?" Kendra's answer was to close the distance between them, her lips meeting his in a kiss that was gentle and tentative and absolutely perfect. Her tusks pressed lightly against his face, a reminder of their differences, but the warmth of her mouth, the way her hand came up to cup his cheek, those were universal. When they finally parted, both were breathing hard and Kendra was crying. "Why tears?" Adrian asked, wiping them away gently. "Because I am happy," Kendra said. "Because I never thought I could have this. Because you make me believe that maybe the world can be better than I thought." Adrian kissed her again, longer this time, and when they broke apart, he pulled her up onto his lap, holding her close as the fire burned low and the storm raged on outside. "We will figure this out," he murmured into her hair. "Together." "Together," Kendra agreed, and in that moment it felt like a promise that could withstand anything. They stayed up late into the night, talking quietly about their feelings, their fears, their hopes for the future. It was the most honest conversation Adrian had ever had, laying bare his soul to someone who understood brokenness and healing in ways no one else could. When they finally went to their separate rooms, it was with the understanding that something fundamental had changed. They were no longer just partners in managing a farm. They were something more, something neither had quite defined but both recognized as precious and worth protecting. The next morning, Mora and Lysa were insufferably smug at breakfast. "Took you long enough," Mora said, passing Adrian the porridge with a grin. "We are very happy for you," Lysa added more gently. Kendra's cheeks darkened, but she did not deny anything. "Yes, well, let us not make a big production out of it." "Too late," Mora said cheerfully. "We have been waiting for this since the first week. You two have been dancing around each other forever." "It has only been a few months," Adrian protested. "Exactly," Mora said. "Forever." Despite the teasing, there was genuine joy in both sisters' reactions. They had wanted this for Kendra, Adrian realized, wanted her to find happiness and love. The thought that they cared enough about his relationship with their sister to be invested in it warmed him. The winter deepened, but the warmth inside the farmhouse grew. Adrian and Kendra's relationship developed slowly, carefully, both of them aware of the weight of what they were building. They stole moments together when they could, kisses by the fire, holding hands while walking to the barn, quiet conversations that lasted long into the night. But they were also realistic about the challenges ahead. In late January, Adrian made the trip to town for supplies, and the reminder of the outside world was harsh. Men at the trading post spoke casually about orc raids, about the need to drive the green skins back into the mountains, about how any orc sympathizers should be hanged alongside the monsters they protected. Adrian kept his mouth shut and his expression neutral, but the hatred in their voices made his stomach turn. These were the people who would destroy what he had built if they ever learned the truth. These were the people who saw Kendra, Mora, and Lysa as things to be exterminated rather than people to be cherished. He returned to the farm troubled, and Kendra knew immediately that something was wrong. "What happened?" she asked as he unloaded supplies in the kitchen. "Just reminded of how most of the world sees you," Adrian said quietly. The men in town were talking about orcs like they were vermin to be exterminated. Kendra's expression tightened, but she nodded. "This is our reality, Adrian. It is why we have been so careful, why we hide when anyone comes near the farm. The world is not ready for what we have here." "Then we make our own world," Adrian said firmly. "Here on this farm, a world where it does not matter what species you are, only who you are as a person." Kendra kissed him softly. "I love you," she said, the first time either of them had spoken the words aloud. Adrian felt his heart stutter. "I love you too, I have for a while now." "I know," Kendra said with a small smile. "You are not as subtle as you think." They held each other in the kitchen, surrounded by sacks of flour and bags of salt, and it felt like the most sacred space in the world. February brought a thaw, the snow melting into mud, the world turning brown and gray. It was the ugliest time of year, but it also meant spring was coming, and with it, a new season of growth and planting. Adrian and Kendra talked about the future often now, about what crops to plant, about expanding the livestock, about making improvements to the farm. But also about deeper things, about whether they could build a life together permanently, about what that would mean, about the risks and rewards. "I want to marry you," Adrian said one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset. Kendra turned to him, surprise and joy warring on her face. "Truly, truly," Adrian said. "I know it would not be recognized legally. No official would marry a human to an orc, but that does not matter to me. I want you to be my wife in every way that counts. I want to build a life with you, raise a family if we can, grow old together on this farm." Tears streamed down Kendra's face. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I want that too, all of it." They kissed as the sun sank below the horizon, and when they pulled apart they found Mora and Lysa watching from the doorway, both crying as well. "We are getting married," Kendra told her sisters. Mora whooped and swept them both into a crushing hug. Lysa joined in, and for a moment it was just the four of them, a family celebrating their joy together. "When?" Lysa asked when they finally separated. "First day of spring," Kendra said, looking to Adrian for confirmation. He nodded. "We will have a ceremony here on the farm," Adrian said, "just the four of us. It does not need to be official to be real." "I will make a cake," Lysa said excitedly. "I will carve you something," Mora added, "something to mark the occasion." They spent the rest of the evening planning, their excitement infectious. Adrian found himself grinning like a fool, unable to believe that his life had transformed so completely in less than a year. That night, Kendra came to his room for the first time, and they made love slowly and carefully, learning each other's bodies with the same patient attention they had brought to learning the farm. Afterward they lay tangled together, her head on his chest, his fingers tracing the darker patterns on her skin. "I never thought I would have this," Kendra murmured. "Love, safety, a future. You have given me all of that. You gave it to me too, Adrian said. I came here broken, running from a war I could not forget. You healed me, Kendra. You and your sisters and this farm. You made me whole again. She tilted her head up to kiss him, and they lost themselves in each other once more. March arrived with the promise of renewal. The snow melted completely, revealing the earth beneath. They began preparing the fields for planting, repairing equipment, planning the season ahead, and they prepared for the wedding. Lisa threw herself into making it perfect, sewing a new dress for Kendra from fabric Adrian had bought in town. Maura carved a pair of rings from oak wood, simple but beautiful. Adrian cleaned and organized their father's old room, transforming it into a proper bedroom for him and Kendra to share. The first day of spring dawned clear and bright, the world smelling of wet earth and new growth. They gathered in the field where Adrian had first agreed to partner with the sisters, the place where their unlikely family had truly begun. Lisa had woven wildflowers into Kendra's hair, and she wore the blue dress her sister had made, looking more beautiful than Adrian had ever seen her. He wore his best clothes, cleaned and pressed for the occasion. Maura stood as their officiant, a role she took with surprising seriousness. We are here because these two idiots finally figured out what we all knew from the beginning, she said, and everyone laughed. But also because love is rare and precious, especially between people who were supposed to be enemies. Adrian and Kendra have chosen each other despite the world telling them they should not. They have built something beautiful here, and today they are making it permanent. She looked at Adrian. Do you, Adrian Norcross, take Kendra as your wife? Do you promise to love her, protect her, stand beside her through whatever the world throws at you? I do, Adrian said, his voice steady. Maura turned to Kendra. Do you, Kendra, take Adrian as your husband? Do you promise to love him, challenge him, build a life with him no matter the obstacles? I do, Kendra said, her voice thick with emotion. Then by the authority vested in me by absolutely no one, I pronounce you married, Maura said. Kiss your wife, you fool. Adrian did, pulling Kendra close and kissing her as Maura and Lisa cheered. When they broke apart, he slipped the wooden ring onto her finger and she did the same for him. I love you, he said. I love you too, Kendra replied. My husband. The word sent a thrill through him. Husband. He was a husband now, married to the most remarkable woman he had ever met. They celebrated with the feast Lisa had prepared, the cake she had baked, the wine they had been saving for a special occasion. They ate and drank and laughed until the sun set, and then they sat around the fire and told stories late into the night. When Adrian and Kendra finally retired to their newly shared room, it was with the contentment of people who had found exactly where they belonged. Spring progressed into summer, and the farm flourished under their combined care. The crops grew strong and healthy. The animals thrived. The sisters worked together with an efficiency born of years of practice, and Adrian had learned enough to be a true partner in the effort. But the peace could not last forever. In late June, a group of travelers passed through the area, and one of them spotted Maura working in the far field. Word spread quickly that there were orcs living on the Norcross farm. Adrian learned about it when he went to town for supplies. The postmaster pulled him aside with a grave expression. There is talk, Norcross, he said quietly. Talk that you are harboring orcs on your property. Now, I do not put much stock in rumors, but some of the younger men are getting riled up. They are talking about coming out to your place to investigate. Adrian felt cold dread settle in his stomach. When? Could be any day now, the postmaster said. I would make sure any orcs you might know about are long gone before they arrive, if you take my meaning. Adrian thanked him and left town immediately, pushing his horse hard to get home. He arrived to find Kendra, Maura, and Lisa working in the garden, unaware of the danger coming. "We have a problem," he said without preamble. They gathered in the house as he explained what he had learned. Kendra's face went pale, Mora's expression turned furious, and Lysa began to cry. "We will leave," Kendra said immediately. "Tonight we will not put you in danger because of us." "No," Adrian said firmly. "This is your home. I am not letting you be driven away." "Adrian, they will kill us," Kendra said, "and possibly you for protecting us." "Then we need a plan," Adrian said. "We need to make sure that does not happen." They spent the evening discussing options. They could try to hide the sisters when men came, but the farm was small enough that a thorough search would find them. They could claim the sisters were servants, but no one would believe that orcs would willingly serve a human. They could fight, but they were outnumbered, and Adrian had no desire to start a war. Finally, Lysa spoke up quietly. "What if we tell the truth?" Everyone turned to look at her. "Not the whole truth," she clarified, "but enough." "What if Adrian tells them that he hired us as farmhands because we work hard and he needed help? What if he vouches for us as peaceful, productive members of the community?" "They will never accept that," Mora said. "Maybe not all of them," Lysa said, "but some might. And if even a few respected men in town speak up for us, it might be enough to prevent violence." It was a long shot, but it was the best idea they had. Adrian spent the next few days going to each of his neighbors, the few scattered farms within a day's ride, and talking to them honestly about the 3 orc women who lived with him. He explained how they had been maintaining the farm for years, how they had taught him everything he knew, how they were peaceful and hardworking. Some of the farmers were hostile, slamming doors in his face or threatening to join the mob coming for the orcs. But others listened. A few even admitted they had suspected orcs were around and had chosen to ignore it because the Norcross farm was well maintained and caused no trouble. One older farmer, a man named Thomas Harridan, clasped Adrian's shoulder and said, "I fought orcs in the war, same as you probably did. But I also know that not all orcs are warriors, just like not all humans are saints. If these women are as peaceful as you say, they deserve a chance." When the mob finally arrived, a week after Adrian had received the warning, he was as prepared as he could be. 15 men on horseback rode up to the farm, all armed, all angry. Adrian met them at the property line, very aware of Kendra, Mora, and Lysa watching from the house. "We heard you are harboring orcs, Norcross," the leader said. He was a young man named Marcus Raid, the son of a wealthy merchant in town. "I employ 3 orc women as farmhands," Adrian said calmly. "They have been here for years, working this land peacefully." "Orcs cannot be peaceful," Marcus said. "They are monsters." "These are not," Adrian said. "They have harmed no one. They tend crops, care for animals, and keep to themselves. They are no threat to anyone." "They are orcs," another man shouted. "That is threat enough." "Is it?" Adrian asked. He gestured to the farm around them. "Look at this place. Does it look like it is being destroyed by monsters? The fields are productive, the animals are healthy, the buildings are well maintained. The orcs who live here have done nothing but improve this land." "He is right," Thomas Harridan said, riding forward. Adrian had not known the old farmer would come, but his presence bolstered his courage. "I have known this farm for 20 years. It has never been in better condition than it is now. If orcs are responsible for that, then maybe we have been wrong about them." "Traitor," Marcus spat. "Realist," Thomas corrected. "I fought orcs in the war, boy. I know what orc warriors are like, but I also know that not every orc is a warrior, just like not every human is a soldier. These women have been here for years without causing trouble. Leave them be." The mob was wavering. Adrian could see it. Some men still looked angry and determined, but others were uncertain, looking at the farm and seeing the evidence of productive, peaceful labor. "Let me show you," Adrian said. "Let me introduce you to them. Let you see for yourselves that they are not monsters." It was a huge risk, but Marcus, after a long moment, nodded. "Fine, but any sign of danger and we will kill them all." Adrian led the group to the house, his heart hammering. Kendra, Mora, and Lysa stood on the porch, clearly terrified but holding their ground. "This is Kendra," Adrian said, gesturing to each sister in turn. "Mora and Lysa. They have been maintaining this farm since their father, the previous owner, died. They are skilled farmers, hard workers, and peaceful people." The men stared at the three orc women, weapons still ready. The silence stretched painfully. Finally, an older man near the back spoke up. "You are the ones who sold me eggs last spring, are you not? At the market in town?" Lysa nodded nervously. "Yes, sir. We had extra and Adrian suggested we sell them." "They were good eggs," the man said. "Best I had bought in years." He looked at Marcus. "I bought eggs from an orc and did not even know it. They did not poison me or curse me or whatever we are supposed to fear. They just sold me good eggs." Another man laughed nervously. "Hell, I probably have eaten food they grew. The Norcross farm supplies half the produce to the market some months." The tension was slowly bleeding out of the situation. Not completely, but enough that Adrian felt he could breathe again. Marcus still looked hostile, but he lowered his weapon. "Fine. They can stay for now, but one incident, one complaint, and we will be back to finish this." "Understood," Adrian said. The mob dispersed slowly, some men still grumbling, others looking thoughtful. Thomas stayed behind for a moment. "That was well done, son," he said quietly. "But be careful. You have made enemies today among the hardliners. Watch your back." "Thank you," Adrian said, "for speaking up." Thomas nodded and rode away, leaving Adrian alone with his family. Kendra rushed down from the porch and into his arms, shaking. "I thought they were going to kill us all." "I know," Adrian said, holding her tight. "But they did not. We survived." Mora and Lysa joined the embrace, all four of them clinging to each other in relief and residual fear. "We cannot stay here," Mora said. "It is only a matter of time before they come back." "No," Adrian said firmly. "This is our home. We are not being driven away. We will be more careful, yes. We will be prepared, but we are not leaving." They went inside and barred the door, holding each other as the adrenaline slowly faded. It had been a close call, far too close, but they had survived. And in surviving, they had shown the community that orcs could be peaceful, productive members of society. It was a small victory, but it was a start. The summer passed with increased caution. Adrian made sure to be visible in town regularly, maintaining relationships with the farmers who had been sympathetic. He talked openly about his orc farmhands, normalizing their presence, making it harder for people to see them as monsters rather than neighbors. Slowly, incrementally, attitudes began to shift. Not with everyone, there were still plenty of people who saw orcs as enemies no matter what. But enough people softened. Enough people became willing to see Kendra, Mora, and Lysa as individuals, that the threat of mob violence receded. By autumn, when harvest time came, several neighboring farmers actually stopped by to trade labor, working in Adrian's fields in exchange for help with their own harvests. They were stiff and awkward around the orc women at first, but over time, conversations began. Jokes were shared. The barriers slowly came down. One evening in late October, as they celebrated another successful harvest, Adrian stood with Kendra watching the sunset over their fields. "We did it," Kendra said softly. "We survived. We built something that can last." "We did," Adrian agreed. "Together." "I am pregnant," Kendra said, so quietly he almost missed it. Adrian spun to face her. "What?" She smiled, tears in her eyes. "I am pregnant with our child. I have suspected for a few weeks, but I wanted to be sure before I told you." Joy exploded through Adrian like fireworks. He swept Kendra into his arms, spinning her around as she laughed. "We are having a baby." Mora and Lisa came running from the house at the commotion, and when they heard the news, they screamed with delight. More hugs, more tears, more celebration. That night, they sat together planning for the future. A future that now included a child, a new generation that would grow up knowing both orc and human heritage, that would bridge the divide between two peoples. Winter came again, their second together. This time, there was no uncertainty, no wariness. They were a family, solid and sure. Adrian worked on building a cradle for the baby while Kendra rested, and Mora and Lisa fussed over her constantly. In early March, on a cold night when the wind howled outside, Kendra went into labor. Adrian held her hand while Mora and Lisa helped with the delivery, their father having taught them the basics of midwifery years ago. The labor was long and difficult, and Adrian felt every moment of Kendra's pain as if it were his own. But finally, as dawn broke, a baby's cry filled the farmhouse. "A girl," Lisa said, tears streaming down her face as she wrapped the infant in clean cloth. Adrian looked at his daughter, this tiny perfect being with green-tinged skin and her mother's amber eyes, and felt his heart expand beyond anything he had thought possible. "She is beautiful," he whispered. "She is ours," Kendra said, exhausted but radiant as Lisa placed the baby in her arms. What should we name her? They had discussed names for months, unable to agree. But looking at his daughter, Adrian knew. "Hope," he said. "We should name her Hope. Because that is what she represents. Hope for a better future, for a world where people like her do not have to hide or be afraid." Kendra smiled. "Hope Norcross. I love it." The baby, Hope, became the center of their world. She was healthy and strong, with a temperament that was equal parts her mother's determination and her father's gentleness. As she grew, it became clear she had inherited the best of both her parents. By the time Hope was 6 months old, toddling around the farmhouse and charming everyone she met, word of her existence had spread through the community. Adrian braced for backlash, but it never came. Instead, neighbors stopped by to see the baby, to bring gifts, to offer congratulations. The half-orc child became a symbol of something new, something different. Not everyone approved, but enough did that the Norcross family found themselves slowly becoming part of the community, rather than outsiders to be feared. Years passed in a blur of seasons and growth. Hope grew into a bright, curious child who loved the farm as much as her parents did. Adrian and Kendra's love deepened with time, weathering challenges and celebrating victories together. Mora eventually met a traveling orc merchant and, after much deliberation, chose to leave the farm to build a life with him, though she visited often. Lisa stayed, finding her calling in teaching Hope and eventually other children from the area, becoming a beloved tutor. Adrian watched his daughter chase chickens across the yard one spring morning, her laughter carrying on the breeze, and thought about how far he had come. From a broken soldier fleeing his demons to a husband, father, and farmer who had found peace in the most unlikely place. Kendra came up behind him, wrapping her arms around his waist and resting her head on his shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "About the day I signed the deed to this place," Adrian said. "About how terrified I was when 3 orc sisters walked out and told me I belonged to them." Kendra laughed. "We never actually said that." "Mora did," Adrian corrected. "In her way, but she was right, you know. I do belong to you, to all of you. This family, this farm, this life, it owns me completely, and I would not have it any other way." "I love you," Kendra said, kissing his cheek. "I love you too," Adrian replied, turning to hold her properly. "Thank you for taking a chance on a broken soldier who had no idea what he was doing." "Thank you for seeing us as people worth knowing," Kendra countered, "for building this life with us." Hope ran over, demanding to be picked up, and Adrian lifted his daughter into his arms. She had Kendra's eyes, his smile, and a spirit that belonged entirely to herself. "Tell me the story again," Hope demanded. "About how you and Mama met." Adrian looked at Kendra, who rolled her eyes but smiled. "Again?" she asked. "Again," Hope said firmly. So Adrian carried his daughter to the porch, Kendra walking beside them, and began the story of how he had bought a farm and found a family, of how fear had turned to love, of how the most unexpected beginnings could lead to the most beautiful endings. As he talked, the sun rose higher, warming the fields that had become his home. The animals stirred in the barn. The crops swayed in the gentle breeze. And Adrian Norcross, former soldier, current farmer, husband to an orc and father to a half-orc child, knew with absolute certainty that he was exactly where he was meant to be. The story of how he had signed a deed to a remote farm, and 3 orc sisters had walked out claiming he belonged to them, had become the story of how he had found belonging itself. How he had discovered that family was not about blood or species, but about the bonds forged through shared struggle and love. It was a story that would continue for many years to come, through more children, more harvests, more challenges overcome together. But in this moment, with his wife beside him and his daughter in his arms, Adrian had everything he had ever needed. The farm had saved him, just as Kendra's father had predicted it would. But more than that, the love he had found here had healed wounds he had not known how to name. It had given him purpose, joy, and a future worth fighting for. As Hope's eyes grew heavy and she dozed against his chest, Adrian looked out over the land that had become his whole world. This place, these people, this life, it was more than he had ever dreamed possible when he had first arrived, desperate and lost. Now he was found. He was home. And he belonged exactly where he was, surrounded by the family he had never expected, but could no longer imagine living without. The end.